Hello, and welcome to Prism. Prism is a design-oriented podcast hosted by me, Dan Harden. Like a glass prism that reveals the color hidden inside white light, this podcast will reveal the inside story behind innovation, especially the people that make it happen. My aim is to uncover each guest's unique point of view, their insights, their methods, or their own secret motivator, perhaps, that fuels their creative genius.
Welcome to Prism. I'm Ann Van Italie, Whipsaw's Director of Business Development, and it is my absolute pleasure to be the one asking the questions today. As you know, it's Whipsaw's 25th anniversary this year, and so I thought we could start, Dan, by you taking us back to 1999. Tell me what that was like, 1999, the starting of Whipsaw.
That sounds like a Prince song, doesn't it?
I know.
Okay. Take us back. Well, one is it's still very fresh in my mind. You know, I know it's kind of hard to imagine, but 25 years actually flies by. Mm-hmm. It really moves. So I have very vivid memories of that time in my life. It was a big transition for me, going from a firm that I had been at for 10 years to then strike out on my own, and big sense of not only ambition, but hope and desires and dreams. So it felt really good. I kind of felt like I was sort of emerging from something and seeing this grand horizon in front of me and a huge sky, a universe of possibility. It was very positive. I'm usually a pretty positive person, but at that time it was just like, holy cow, this is something great is going to happen. Mm-hmm. I just sensed it, and I felt it.
So what's one thing that surprised you over the past 25 years?
Wow. There's been so many, and where do I start? One thing that surprised me, how fast it's gone, how relentless you have to be with every single detail. I mean, I've always known that about business, but when it's your own company, there are so many things that you have to be concerned with, and it never lets up. Like, there are times when I am laying in bed at midnight, I'm like, oh shit, I forgot to do this or that. So I think it's just, it wasn't really a surprise. Maybe it was more of a realization. I think it's every business owner faces that, and they get it. It's something that you have to embrace. You have to accept it. But you know, surprises. There've been surprises almost with every single project too. You know, a project that you thought was going to go in a certain direction, and something happens that shifts the way that you think about the problem, your client, your team, yourself. Mm. Changes, often associated with surprise or a different sense of realization.
Yeah. So based on those surprises, what advice would you give to younger designers who might be considering a similar move? And I'm curious, what advice would you give to yourself if you could go back and talk to the Dan of 1999?
So there are two parts to that question. The first part would be, make sure you're made of the right stuff to have your own company. It sounds glamorous, and it is. In a lot of ways it is. But it's also really hard. So be careful what you wish for. Be prepared to be extremely frustrated, go through struggle. The business, when you have your own business, other parts of your life will interfere with it. And so that's natural. When you're a creative type, a lot of times you have this dreamy sense about a future that you might want to visualize, and you think, okay, I can do that. But you didn't really provide the foundational requirements to run a business. So as a designer, you also have to be a good business person. You have to have the fortitude to know, like, Well, we have a financial problem, so we need to get advice from an accountant, or you need to call your attorney and solve a problem with a client. Things that creative people don't like to do. I expected that because I had worked for 16 years in consulting prior to founding Whipsaw. So also just learning how people think, and the people that are not like you, your clients are not like you. They're coming to you because you have something special to offer them. So you have to be able to speak their language. You have to be able to wear your marketing hat, your engineering hat, your leadership and management hat. Even though you don't need to know the ins and outs of their corporation necessarily, you have to at least align with what their needs and expectations are, understand those stakeholders, where they're coming from, because too many times designers think inside a box or a bubble, and you can't when you're working with clients, especially as a consultant. You know, that would be true if you're working inside a corporation too, but as a consultant, you are introduced to so many different types of companies and clients. But, you know, speaking of that, like getting to know your client and being the fullest designer that you can, while also working within the business construct that you're being asked to work in, you need to reconcile these two. I'm constantly on the seesaw, you know, thinking like a designer, thinking like a business person, and going back to being a designer. And sometimes you have to compromise. Sometimes your big vision about a design does not necessarily fit a particular brand you're designing for, or it might be too expensive, or the features might be too futuristic or something. There's always something. You have to know how to give and take. You know, that kind of goes even to the meaning of a whipsaw. You know, some of that give and take is part of what we stand for. The advice that I would give myself, you know, I kind of had a vision for this. So I think I would have said, it's going to be okay. This will work. Your vision for the company, the need for what you can offer the world will exist forever. When you're starting out, I think it's natural to think, well, am I really going to be able to get the kind of caliber work that I know I'm capable of doing? Will we be able to attract a big clientele? So I think I would say just, kind of like chill. Everything will come. It will happen. Believe completely in yourself, and don't worry about anything. Never give up. Tenacity as a word has always meant a lot to me. You know, if something happens with a client, or you lose a client, or you lose a bid, you just get right back up on your horse and you just keep going. There are other opportunities. If you're secure in what you believe in, if you have a set of principles that you follow, just lock onto those. And if they are good, true principles, good things are going to happen. Some of those principles that I locked onto early on were treat people the way that I'd want to be treated, always show respect for your client and your team, just generally that, people enjoy working with people. Never let your design guard down, meaning if you have a vision about what good design is, stick to it, build on it, stay strong. Don't let the world beat you down, because I know a lot of designers that finally they kind of give up after a certain amount of time, because innovation is hard. To convince clients to do the right thing, the cool thing, the thing that will create more demand, bring more value and benefit to the end user, help the planet. It's hard to get all of these aligned. But if you have a belief system, and you should, as a designer, as a young designer, and if you want to start a company, build on your belief system. Build, what is your philosophical base? What are your values? What's important? What's important to the world? What does the world need and want? And what can you, as a creative individual, offer that world in need?
You just talked about the principles, some of the principles that you have stuck with. What are some of the key decisions early on that you made that you believe were pivotal to Whipsaw's success today?
Yeah. One is stay focused on what we do best, and that was industrial design and engineering, which has now grown into all types of experience design, digital design, UI, UX. The other was to realize that the type of design that I like to do and the team, it applied really well to a lot of different industries. So we realized that this pretty human-centric approach that we like, it applied beautifully to the early days of consumer electronics. We were doing a lot of that kind of work, electronics, computing, networking. But guess what? It also applies really well to medical products and healthcare in general, because of the need to have products that are so oriented around the end user's problem. Then that, of course, led to life sciences, and then robotics, and almost every industry you can think of. I mean, you do business development, so you've seen our portfolio is just like massive. So when a potential client says to us, "Oh, have you ever designed a so-and-so?" We're like, as a matter of fact, we have. I love that about the fact that those decisions to get into so many interesting, unique markets. Some of them are very specific vertical markets. Some of those are the most fascinating to work in, because we'll enter a market and we don't know anything about it. When we started working in like ion chromatography in like 2005, we're like, what's that? We sit down and your client is talking all the time in acronyms, pure acronyms. We're like, whoa, wait a minute. And we had to bring it down to the simplest of things. They were moving fluids around, chemistry, and they were placing those in a spectrometer and a suppressor. So I'll never forget that meeting. Like in those early days, trying to understand exactly how ion chromatography works. Like every project, you have to understand what you're going to design. And in that case, it's very scientific, very interesting. And we ended up talking about, okay, like if you put orange juice in here and that's moving through and you're going to take the sugar out like this and you're going to add water. And we had to bring it down to terms that we could really get. Our whole team. Diversity was an early decision.
Diversity of industries or diversity of talent?
Diversity in the industry and the different industries was very important from day one. But diversity with the team was also important. I mean, I've often worked with people from all around the world, all different kinds of people. And I just find that cultural influence to be such a benefit on design programs. Like what is beautiful to me may not be to someone from a different corner of the world. And that fascinates me. I love that cultural diversification. Another interesting point I haven't really thought much about as far as like key decision points. If you recall back in, like the internet bubble, late 90s, and then there was a little mini crash in 2003. Then there were other crashes, 2007, 2008. And the whole design industry was like, every time something would change, a big economic change, it seemed like the design industry had to reinvent itself every time. We were reinventing how we design our processes. However, we didn't change the profile of the company. We stayed true with what we really love to do, and we didn't panic. A lot of firms did. A lot of firms changed or sold. We just stayed true. We wanted to do what we really wanted to always do. And there was clarity in really most of the decisions as we were moving forward. I'm sure there are so many other critical decisions. Hiring the right kinds of people, that's everything. Design is people. You rally people, you bring them together, you nurture their talents, you support them, you guide them carefully. And creatives are difficult to manage. Sometimes designers, they don't want to be told anything, because they think they're brilliant and they know it all. But they often will respect and respond to real well-meant, authentic critique that is constructive. So deciding years ago that's how I wanted to run the company, on that kind of leadership where it's big on listening, always constructive, positive, and at the same time an underlying kind of strength by providing the kind of mental support that creatives need. Like, and how that translates is making sure that people understand what their purpose is and what this brand's purpose is. Why are you coming to work? The why is a big part of running a company. And most companies are really good at the who and the what, but not really the why. So if you ask a lot of people just walking down the street that work in any one of these companies around here in San Francisco, why does your company do what they do? Well, we're going to make a lot of money selling this new app. Yeah, why are you really doing this? We bring it back. We do bring it back to the things that we think we've always striven for, and that is to improve lives and help the planet however we can. It's difficult as an industrial designer when we're asked to produce lots and lots of products that become successful. If you're successful as a manufacturer of products, you're probably producing things that are not really helping the planet, definitely filling it up with more stuff. But we try to do it with enough positive intent that people keep their products longer, they are more caring about their purchasing decisions, that sustainability is maybe part of the factor in your decision making. All of these things I'm mentioning now were intentional. To answer your question, they were intentional decisions along the way.
Yeah.
About this is the kind of company you want to be, and as a company evolves, you have to tweak it. There have been times when we've tried certain industries and it's been a struggle, and then we've shifted. Like during the pandemic, we had 2 offices and we had like 2 or 3 people in each one of them knocking around each day. It made no sense. Mm-hmm. We needed to get our club back together. So we're going to close those 2 offices. I remember everybody freaked out. I said, we're going to close San Francisco. Everybody's like, what? And we're going to close San Jose. But then where are we going to go? You'll see. We're going to find the grand space. That's where we're sitting right now. So we found this beautiful place that responded more to a new work style. This feels maybe in some ways a little bit like home. It's warm, it's vast. Not that everybody's home is vast, especially in San Francisco, but this is a great place to come and be creative. Mm-hmm. So that's what I mean by shift. You sometimes have to shift when you have a company. You have to take bold decisions sometimes. You have to modify your service profile, lean more into maybe one of your services than the other as one begins to change. Like, for example, 25 years ago, all good industrial design firms had a very strong mechanical engineering part to the company. And as more and more engineering work was offshored or brought directly into the factories that manufacture these products, whereby those factories could offer those services practically for free to a manufacturer or brand, it made it more and more difficult for us to compete. So we pulled back a little bit on engineering, instead focusing more on conceptual engineering, more of this upfront kind of engineering where you're inventing more than implementing. And we find that more exciting anyway to do. So that was a decision, that we finally made a move more in that direction, like 8 years ago or so. But change is a natural part of, I think, a healthy part of any company. You have to be open to it. Sometimes it hurts to change because once you've established something that works, and then after a few years it's not working anymore, you have to say, okay, that's not working anymore, let's change. So, and I think my point is, you you can never rest. Like I have never gotten to a point where I'm like, okay, it's now where I want it. This company is just, we're cruising. I have never said that.
Yeah.
That's important. And that's when big companies begin to die. When they say to themselves, well, we're now the leaders, we can cruise, we don't have to spend money on marketing or PR, we've won all the awards we need to. No, you have to constantly keep pushing in this industry. You have to push yourself to keep innovating, keep experimenting. I don't want to become a designosaur as I age, so I am constantly self-critical. I push myself hard. Like, what else can I think of here? What's fresher than that? I might have had a fresh thought yesterday. What's fresher than that? So, that's just a drive I have always had. And I look for that in others. You hiring people, you look for different things, and a company needs different kinds of people, but that's at its core, that's often one thing that I really, really like, when people have that kind of drive.
You're teeing up the next question. What role has company culture played in Whipsaw's longevity and success?
I think it's been a huge part. Culture, maintaining your culture over a long span of time is hard to do because you can't always control it. You can't just sit back and say, well, I want the company to be like this culturally. That company's going to turn around and bite you. You have to let people be who they are, give them a lot of freedom, let them thrive, which means sometimes getting out of their way, especially, again, the creative people. You have to provide an environment that people feel safe in, especially creatively safe. You want people to know that you're not going to be overjudged. Some judgment's okay, like a good critique. Oh, designers love a good critique. I love a good critique. Like, no, tell me what you really think. I want to know. And I like getting a critique from, not only people within the company, but bringing outsiders in, like the consumer or layperson that comes in and says, well, you guys are all goofy designers here. Well, I would never buy that. Well, why wouldn't you buy it? Well, that form looks like blah, You never know what you're going to find. So being respectful of that, creating a place where people feel just very, very welcome and cared for, but it has to come from a very real place. Very real. You have to be authentic. Like if you're trying to be, I've seen so many, companies that try to say, this is what our culture is, but then they don't actually practice it. You have to be real. You have to be able to just pony up when it comes to doing the right thing for your team. The culture in the company has changed, over 25 years, we've had our ups and downs. The pandemic was the most challenging, I think, when we were all on Zoom every day. I wasn't sure how that was going to work. None of us did, but running a creative agency over Zoom, that was tough. We're all sketching and CADing at home and coming together. We couldn't benefit from those spontaneous moments when something just comes to us with this unfettered creativity, which I've always loved. Where, oh man, that's cool. You walk past somebody's monitor and all of a sudden you get it. It's the aha moment, the proverbial moment. Mm-hmm. So that challenged our culture. And then, lastly, I think regarding culture, this is fun. What we do is freaking fun. So just get out of your own way. Don't overstructure the firm where people aren't having fun anymore. It's kind of a delicate thing because design by nature is fun, and you want it to be as free as the feeling you get when you walk into nature. Right? You want it to feel that natural. But it's also a business, and it needs structure. You need to make hard decisions. You have budgets to follow. You have timelines. You have client needs that clash with your wants as a designer. Mm-hmm. for me, what I try to always do is create a culture where you have the structure, but it's kind of a little bit under the covers. It's a little hidden. The structure's there. So that means the creative type can be like, well, this is my place. This is how I create. But they always have support. They have people that gently nudge them in a direction, like, hey, you better speed up. We're kind of closing into the end of phase one. You kind of got to hurry up a little bit. And designer's like a good push, providing it's real again. Anyway, I could go on about culture. I like culture.
I could tell. Kind of similarly, I was curious, what do great projects and or great client partnerships have in common? Like, what do you look for whenever it's really, really good?
Much like designers and our clients, I like passionate clients because that's often the fuel that will carry them over the finish line, which means production and success. So that means you got to find the champion in your client, whoever that might be. It might be the CEO, it might not be. There are a lot of companies we don't get to meet the CEO, but there's this project manager or product manager that's on fire about this, and they just have a sense about the direction, the future of the company, and they're going to trust you. Trust is another one. When clients trust you, it puts more of the onus on yourself to get it right. I remember when Stan Shi, the founder of Acer, said to me, he's like, that about the Acer Aspire, the product that I had just designed, and he says, Dan, I don't understand this. This is wild, but I trust you. So I ask you, is this going to work? And I said, it will absolutely work. He said, okay. He looked at his engineers on the opposite side of the table, and they're all wearing black suits. He said, make it happen. Ship this computer in 9 months. Dan said, it's going to work. And now, of course, boom, 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 my heart's coming out of my chest because, like, oh man, it better work. But again, the sincerity, I think, is really important. To be sincere with your client. So also, clients that have a vision, I think, are usually more interesting to work with, or clients that have something secret, something that's so unique that nobody knows about. It could be a technology, it could be a methodology, it could be a business plan that's super creative, it could be a unique market that's untapped. And if you can lock into their vision and complement it, that's one of the best things designers can do, is be complementary to your client. Don't expect to go in and just say, okay, our solution is going to be the ingredient that makes you successful. Sometimes that's the case, but it's more often the case that you are augmenting a great big machine. You are a part of it. You're a wheel among other wheels, and design is extremely important, but they better have their marketing plan together, and their engineers should be good, and they should have a good procurement line of capabilities of, like, procuring products and parts of products and logistics. Yep. All of these things are important. So we look for that. Sometimes when you're talking to a client, there are big chunks missing. It's really important to, like, identify those early on so you know what you're getting into. And you can decide if you want to work on that or not.
You're kind of headed there already. How has the design industry evolved over the past 25 years, and how has Whipsaw adapted to that? You hinted at it with the recessions and with some of the acquisitions of other design firms.
Yeah, those are more transactional things. The bigger things is, I think, would be design has become more than just a few definitions. It's always changing. So it's become polymorphic, you could say. It's multiples that are always changing. So in my field of industrial design, in the mid to late 90s, we started doing digital design. We called it new media design. It turns out that industrial designers happen to be really good at digital design. Why? Because they can readily and quickly visualize the way that people interact with a product. And the digital is also an interaction model. So when you interact digitally, there's often a sense of cause and effect. So when you look at something, whether it's a graphic or a moving element or in pixels, the same way that I would expect to reach out on a product and move a knob or a button, there's a similar kind of relationship with digital. It's different, but it's similar. And in some cases, when they become really merged, where it feels somewhat analog, a digital experience can be really wonderful. So I think industrial designers are good at that, and therefore that has changed. So a lot of firms started offering this, 2000 plus. There are a lot of companies now that understand what design is, so that's changed. Just a design narrative. Yeah, corporations, clients, they now know what design is. And the earlier part of my career, it was often the case where they'd be like, well, what do you mean you're doing industrial design? Do you design factories? What is that? You explain it to them, and once people realize it's been around, it's been called this for about 100 years, then they're like, oh yeah, that's actually kind of important, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So just the whole design narrative, it's changed. It's kind of like, it became hot, like in 2005, 2010, and everybody wanted to hire a designer. I love how design has moved from objects to experiences to designing businesses. There are books written about designing your life. Design is now like an act that everybody understands. And design, I love how it's moved from just like a thing to an action. And that is really empowering to a lot of people when you can actually say, how would I want to design this experience? I've heard people say, how should we design your birthday party, son? Oh, that is pretty cool. Of course. It's about assembling elements for a desired effect. And that's all you're doing, whether it's you're assembling plastic and metal to create a functional product, or you're assembling an experience. You have to visualize the same thing. You look out in the future and you put parts together for desired effect. So that's changed. Businesses now use design as a tool to organize their company, to creatively problem solve, and not just product problem solve, but solving people problems within the organization, solving bigger strategic marketing problems, or using design thinking. The term design thinking did not exist 25 years ago. We were thinking when we were designing, but we didn't really say design thinking. Mm-hmm. It's a catchy term that businesses locked on to as a formula that was accessible to them, that was pretty understandable to them, and by the way, it was also fun. When you follow it more of a design thinking formula, it's a really cool process, and it's very inclusive. Everybody can jump in, and you have results fast. It's not going to give you necessarily the winning solution, but it will uncover a lot of problems. You can discover a lot of opportunities and begin to frame up. I think it's really good for framing a problem. Mm-hmm. So that's changed. Of course, the technology's changed. AI is now just more recently starting to affect how we think about design and our process. We've been using more VR to see our designs in real life. It's one thing to see it on screen, you're doing CAD, you're turning your image around, but when you are in a room that you design and you see the product that you are envisioning and you show that to your client, I mean, it's mind-blowing. So the technology is great. Of course, 3D printing. I love all the different software collaboration tools. That's changed the way that we work. There's a lot of changes, but I would expect that, because design changed in a really profound way from 50 years ago to
Do you-
25 years ago.
Do you think it's easier or harder now to produce great products, or experiences, whether they're digital or
Yeah,
physical?
it's probably about the same. You have more options now on how you go about solving the problem. The tools are definitely better. It's faster. The process is faster, partly because the CAD systems are so good. And you can print models, as you're designing, you're practically printing. So you can get into the testing and the understanding of what you're proposing much faster. As far as the process goes, it's important to involve so many groups of people. Now, a lot of times you need buy-in from marketing and engineering and management, and sometimes you have to go through testing, whether it's market testing, consumer testing, and that can make it harder to please everyone. I think there was a little bit more of a cowboy method back, in the 70s and 80s, where you're like, man, I got a great idea and a great design that's going with it. And CEO might look at this, that's it, let's go to production. And it might be a royal F up, but it was more seat of the pants. Now everything is vetted with data and tested ad nauseum, and I'm a little bit worried about that, actually. I like products where there's usually the products that are a little bit what a company would say is risky are the more exciting ones. And you'll tick off a bunch of consumers, but that's okay. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to buy that. There are plenty of people to buy things. So,
all right, what's been, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, it's too hard, but what's been your proudest moment as a founder?
I'm really proud when somebody will come up to me at a conference and say, oh my God, Dan, and I used to work with you, back in 2005, and I may not recognize them because they were like an intern and they were like 20, and now I don't recognize them. And they're like, you at Whipsaw completely changed my life. I had an epiphany when I was there. You helped me understand who I am, where I need to go as an individual. I'm really proud of those moments because it means that we treated them well and we exposed them to this wonderful world of design in a way that was very authentic, that they could understand, and they just lit up from it. So I'm proud of that. I'm also proud when I just walk around and in the world and see products that we have designed out there doing what we hope that they would do, and that's solve problems, delight people. Generally, I think my definition of success is probably different than a lot of our clients. Of course, I want our clients to have prosperity. Of course, your design should sell well. When it's selling well, it means that there is high demand. There's something about that product, whether it's the way it looks, works, acts, that is attracting you to purchase it. But when you see these multiple products out there in the world doing just that, providing forms of satisfaction, that just makes me smile.
How do you envision the future of design?
Well, it's going to continue to change. We know that. The same way it did 25 years ago to now, it will continue on its journey. If it didn't, it wouldn't be a healthy industry. Things have to constantly evolve. It's likely that artificial intelligence is going to have a big effect on it. It's already pretty darn good, and it's only 2 years old. Generative design will get to a point, I don't know if it's 5 years from now or 10, when you can input just a few things. So I think that's going to have the most profound effect on the future of design. The world is a little bit in trouble right now in a lot of different ways. We see what's happening to our environment. We see what's happening politically. It seems like a lot of things are in a state of mess. And I do think that the designers, they're already being seen like this, but designers are being called on because of their ability to see things that aren't here yet. And there is a certain crafty sensibility about designers that I think is probably more relevant now than at any time in history. We should take that sensitivity and be applying it to some of the bigger problems that the world is being faced with. And as I was talking about designing experiences, designing events, we should be designing governments. We should be designing solutions to major problems like energy and healthcare and oh my God, the myriad of problems that the world has. So I think I hope that the world will employ designers to do more than what we've been limited to do up until now. And why not? I think creativity is the lifeblood of humanity.
Where do you see Whipsaw in the next 25 years?
Okay, so I think next 25 years we'll definitely we're going to keep doing what we do. And the world is always going to need great industrial design, I believe that. There are things, you need material things in your world to go about your daily life. So we're going to continue to design great products there. We will strive more to make those products last as long as possible, to make them as sustainable as possible. We need to understand we need to help companies create these breakthroughs in material science however we can, or take the science of materials and apply it and imbue it within the products that we're ultimately designing for mass production. We need to figure this AI thing out. I don't know how it's going to affect the business. Either we'll be thriving because we would have figured it out, or we'll be tiny firm because AI is going to take over where a lot of designers left off. And make no mistake about it, that's coming. It's coming. If I've seen the changes within 2 years, it's extraordinary. I think expanding the value set that we have to apply to other kinds of problems, we're brought on to apply the kind of problem solving that we discussed for the last hour. But I think in the next 25 years, we're going to be asked to help with different types of challenges, and we don't want to be limited in any way. So again, I believe in our creative powers. How that gets applied, I am certainly open to. We've been asked to do things like, for example, work with a team. I remember giving a team at Cisco a lesson on creativity, and it was a whole room full of electrical engineers. And I am far from an electrical engineer. I mean, I know the basics of electricity, but no. But they're like, Dan, it's okay. No, we wanted more of your guide on how to think creatively and how can you really ignite your imagination. You know, you do this every single day. Well, what are those methodologies? And that was really fascinating to them. So I think that what that means is I don't really know how that's going to manifest. I just know with an open heart that we are going to offer these creative problem-solving capabilities to a world that needs this kind of thinking.
The last question is always...
There's one after future?
No, that was actually the last question. The next last question.
You didn't prep me on any of this, by the way.
No. Well, I offered to. Is there a question that I should have asked you when you think about the totality of Whipsaw? What did I miss?
Ever since I was just about 12 years old, when I would see people going about their daily lives, I would look at something and wonder, why is it done that way? Wouldn't it be better if you did it like this? And I would visualize that in my head. So I think for us, it's very important to offer up the ability to see things in a different way and to actually materialize it, make it happen. And make sure that what we're designing is intended for enablement, support, sometimes for sheer beauty. For the sake of beauty, let's not underestimate how beauty moves us all. We all have different definition of what beauty is, and to me it's a very wide definition. But we like to bring beauty to the world. That's a good reason to exist. We like to solve problems for people. You go through about anyone, if you ask anybody, you have more than 100 touch points throughout your day that are a little bit annoying.
I took a flight today. I can attest
Well,
to
yeah,
that.
that's a big one. That's a big one. But even just like one's ordinary day, there's a lot of hassle to life. And industrial designers are really good at helping solve a lot of little annoying problems. You make a product that is more comfortable, that's stores or carries easier, or collapses, or does something that maybe delights you. There's an emotionality to design, which I've always loved. I think design is half psychology. And you need to, we exist to address some of those problems, but also to nudge culture forward. That's a harder thing to do. And an example of that would be taking the whole movement in the last, say, 40 or 50 years about where technology meets design. I really love this nexus between the two. They support one another really well. Companies like Apple just exemplify that. I think that needs to continue, and I think technology needs to be way more humane, more approachable, more friendly. I think that's also important. So there's a lot of whys to why we exist. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that I'm very different now than I was 25 years ago to answer that question, the why. And thanks for a great interview. I liked how spontaneous this was. It's the end of a hard day. I've been running around all day. So you caught me in a very, I'm a little bit tired, but we're in this nice, moody, big conference room with the train going by. So this is a nice moment to reflect on 25 years of Whipsaw. I still can't believe it's 25 years, but it's an absolute rush. It's been a rush. It will continue to be a rush. I love what I do. And therefore it's kind of easy for me to talk about it. So thanks for listening to my long-winded answers. But 25 years is a big one. So thank you all for listening. I really hope you've enjoyed this, and thank you very much. Thank you for listening to Prism. Follow us on whipsaw.com or your favorite streaming platform, and we'll be back with more thought-provoking episodes soon.
Prism is hosted by Dan Harden, principal designer and CEO of Whipsaw. Produced by Saoirse Lewis, mix and sound design by Eric Buell.